everyone, to this edition of True Philadelphian Sportscast, The Grittiest Take. I am Joe Boric, and as you can see, I'm joined by Chris, FlyersFanMania 93, big fan of the great Jake Voracek. How you doing today, Chris?
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I thank you for having me on and excited to talk some hockey.
Yeah, definitely. We're always excited to talk some hockey. We had the Flyers back in camp today. Everybody looked pretty good, and it was a very exciting day here in Philly, and we're right around the corner from finally having some hockey back on the ice, and the most exciting type of hockey, playoff hockey or round robin hockey, which is going to be playing at a playoff style level since you're playing for seeding. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get into the matchups, as this is another edition of our upset predictors episode, and we're going to go first to one that I don't think we think is going to have a high chance of them upsetting: the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Montreal Canadiens. I assume you'll probably be around the percentage I gave this, but I'll let you know. What's your percentage?
I'm 100% Pittsburgh on this one. It could be a sweep, could be four. I honestly think that if Price steals the game, it's funny because when I did this before on my channel, and I've also done it on my podcast. Or at least I think we did. I'm really losing track of what we've done. But you know, like now that the rosters come out, like my opinions change. Like now that I think at this Flyers team, I'm like, this team could go 3-0 when I look at this roster. But then you compare it to other teams, it's like, oh my god, there's so many balances and things like that. To be honest, I think this is probably the easiest one to predict. The Canadians just don't compare to Pittsburgh. I think that's what it is. Their offense from, I think the Canadians maybe have one line that can match up, and that's probably their first line compared to the Penguins, maybe second line. Defense and goaltending. Obviously, the Canadians have a very good goaltender in Carey Price. I say he could steal a game. If he does, it's probably either the first or second. But this is probably the easiest one by far.
I agree. The problem with Montreal's defense, too, is other than Petrie, and then if Mete is able to come back and play effectively, since he's coming off, I believe it was a foot injury. So that's a big if. They don't have a fast defense, and that's not going to help you against Pittsburgh either. Shea Weber played well, but Shea Weber's not going to help you too much.
No, and especially against the young and talented Penguins team. It's kind of just like,
and Getzel's supposed to be back. He's quick as hell. So
right,
having a slow defense with him ain't helping you at all.
Yeah, and especially when the Penguins have a pretty solid special teams unit, power play, penalty kill. Canadians do not have a great penalty kill. I do not know numbers-wise what it was, but I believe it was in the bottom 10 of the league.
Yeah, I can't remember. They haven't talked about PKs since hockey really stopped. I haven't seen it on NHL Network. Stuff pop up recently. But no, I agree with you. It's definitely, they're not going to match up. Another 5 and 12 is the host city Oilers versus a team with experience, but they wouldn't have been in the playoffs other than this expanded set. Probably also wish they kept Robin Leonard if they thought they would be in the playoffs. But anyway, the Chicago Blackhawks against the Edmonton Oilers. What do you give the Blackhawks chances of upsetting Edmonton, who is the host city playing in their own stadium?
I honestly think that this can be like 45-55. I think this can be a tight series. This is probably one of the more underrated ones. It's gonna be cool to see. I mean, you obviously have Kane and Taves, McDavid, Draisaitl, right? Obviously Chicago's goaltending situation and the Oilers' goaltending situation isn't great. You got Mike Smith, Mikko Koskinen. Who knows who they start? I personally believe it'll probably be Smith. And then you obviously have the younger forwards on the Blackhawks. You have Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Strome against Yamamoto, Nugent Hopkins. It's definitely a tight series. They're two teams that are kind of even, to be honest. And not so much, obviously the Oilers are a better team, a very good power play, pretty solid penalty kill.
They also have better defense, I would say, because Chicago has an aging out, not deep defense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically your two main guys on that defense are, Keith and Seabrook, and both of them are already over, I believe, 33.
And Seabrook's trying to play. That's what he said, because he's coming off with bad injuries, so you don't even know how much you're going to have him.
Yeah, exactly. So it to me, I personally think the Oilers, but I'm going to say the Oilers in 5. I think this is going to be a tight series.
45% chance, correct, at upsetting?
Yeah, I gave him 45-55, but I honestly think it'll be the Oilers edging that out with that 5% there in the fifth game.
Well, it's funny. You said 5%, and you gave a much higher percent to me. I gave the Blackhawks a 5% chance of upsetting them.
Really?
because
Yeah,
it's more because I love the Stromes as brothers, and I like how it looks like Dylan's fitting into Chicago better than he fit into what he gets drafted by Arizona. There it is. And then Ryan's fitting into New York, which is not good for us, but I don't know if they'll keep him. But Ryan is fitting into the Rangers with Dave Quinn, unlike he fit into Edmonton, and then Matthew, of course, is in our system. So I like the way those kids play, but Dylan played solid this year. You're going to need him and DeBrincat to kind of step up, especially Alex, because he's supposed to be the biggest difference maker that kind of eventually is matching Kaner. Like, you're like, wow, this is a two-headed monster or a three-headed monster, because they still have Taze, who actually seems to be aging like a fine wine. So that's what you need more of. If DeBrincat really steps up, then I think it'll be a closer series. If it's more just Taze and Kane matching Draisaitl and McDavid, it's no offense to Taze. It's just his point production's not the same as Draisaitl or McDavid. So Kane would have to have a ungodly playoff series to have, which he can do. But that's what, and for me, I think if the Blackhawks win, will be mostly because of their leadership and the fact that also I think Crawford would have to step up, because when I looked at their goaltending numbers, he has a .917, so does Koskinen. Smith's around the same for save percentage. They're all kind of right grouped in togetherness. So I think that's an interesting series. I feel the Blackhawks are too slow. And the Oilers have not the fastest team, but just having Yamamoto who can score, having Draisaitl and McDavid who can take advantage of slow, aging defensemen, I don't think that's going to.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, too, one thing is like I think they're similar teams, but the thing is that the one division is a lot weaker than the other one. Obviously, the Central is arguably the second best defenseman. I wanted to say division, second best division behind the Metro, and then you have the Pacific, which is kind of just like Vegas. I'm trying to think who's in the Pacific. Oh my God, it's been a while since I've seen hockey. Obviously you have the three California teams that dropped out there. And then you have the Western Canadian teams in Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, and then obviously Vegas as well. But it's just like I feel like the Oilers are in an easier division. I honestly think these teams are kind of similar. And I also think the coaching is better for the Oilers. I think Dave Tippett honestly deserves a very good chance at winning the Jack Adams for this season. And I also think Alain Vigneault is up there as well.
That's what impresses me, kind of like the same as AV. Dave Tippett has a mix of vets and youngsters in his defense, and he got them to play exactly the system he wanted them to play, just like AV got our guys to play exactly the system. He got, when Ethan Bear played, him to buy in with, even though they traded him for Taylor Hall, he still kind of is the stabilizer and leader when guys come up of their defense. And Adam Larson, it's not that he's a bad defenseman. The problem is the trade was terrible. It wasn't that he's bad. It's that you traded Taylor Hall for Adam Larson. Yeah. But he's good for leadership perspective. He's helped all the kids and stuff. You got him. You got Mantha's injured, but he's pretty good. Caleb Jones I like as a physical guy. Obviously, Oscar Cliffbaum's great on the power play. Their defense, to me, played so well. That's why I think it's going to be hard for them to get beat by the Blackhawks, too, unless if they just struggle because of this long layoff.
Yeah, exactly. And especially because you also have Darnell Nurse back there too, who's played better this season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. And then you have as a backup, trying to blank on Russell. Russell played. He's not that great anymore, but at least he's a vet that has a time. If your defense were to get injured, you have someone that has experience.
Yeah. Hopefully, he doesn't put the puck in zone at this time.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too helpful, but. But I think that's why his playing time definitely lessened. But this is an interesting series, especially because these next two we're going to go on have coaches that have ties to our very own Philadelphia Flyers. They would have two, the one series if Lobby didn't get fired, but it happened. So the Predators and Coyotes. who, of course, the Coyotes are coached by Rick Tocchet, and the Predators are now coached by former Devils coach John Hines. So how much of a chance do you think Rick Tocchet's team, which these teams really match up identically, have to beat the Predators?
I did say 60-40. I personally believe Arizona is better by coaching, and I also think, and you're going to call me crazy, I'm going to say their goaltending is better. I mean, Pecorine, a very good goaltender, but I mean, with the way that Kemper played this season for the Coyotes, who I believe is able to play, I know he was injured, and then you also have Antti Ranta as well, who was good for majority of it, struggled at some points, so did Arizona. But then you have Taylor Hall, you have Phil Kessel. Connor Garland had a really nice season. Hinestroza as well. Yeah, Garland had a really good season. And they were actually, I believe, one of the 6 teams to beat the Flyers at home, which is kind of a stupid stat, but even still, I personally think that the Predators' problem is defense. I feel like they obviously have the offensive talent. We've seen that. I just think everything kind of just came to an end there with them in their run. And I think their defense was kind of a problem this season. And again, they're also in a very good division, so you can't really compete if you're kind of bad in that division, because when you have St. Louis, Colorado, and Dallas neck and neck every night, it's kind of hard to compete when you're 10, 15 points behind them at some points in the year. So again, it's I feel like it's going to be this is a series, I say Arizona in 5, because I think they're both even teams, but I'd have to give Arizona just because of the coaching. But there was also that factor, you could say Nashville because of experience, and I could definitely agree with that.
Yeah, Nashville is going to depend. Obviously, it's helpful. Similarly to how when we get to Toronto, Sheldon Keefe, Jamie kind of hinted it's almost like a second season because you have your coaches having their own camp, guys that came in late. So that's exactly what Hines is going to have the opportunity to do, have his own camp with the team, where obviously Rick Tocchet doesn't have to do that. He's been with the Coyotes. So he'll be able to adjust the team and kind of maybe get them to play more of what he wants rather than a combination of Lavi's system to his system and all those things. So it's going to be interesting to also see how that plays out and if that helps Pekka, because this was obviously the first season in his entire career that Pekka Rinne really struggled. So he has to bounce back, but I also believe it's kind of like basketball's like my third or fourth sport, but like people always talk about Rajon Rondo. There's playoff Rondo. Some goalies just have the playoff version of themselves. Pekka Rinne seems to be one of those guys. So I think if they decide to go with him, again, Saros played great, so they might decide to go with the kid first. He could step up. That's a close one. I put them at 25% just because I think the Predators, with how much I think they have, like you said, the offensive team, and their defense really isn't bad. It's just guys played bad. Like, guys had down years. It's not that they have no name. Like, Ekholm didn't play as good as he normally does. Dante
very, very solid defenseman. Fabro's very good, too.
Played very good. And then Yossi played normal because Yossi could win. He's one of the guys up there for the
Norris. Yeah.
So, and then Tenorti came in and played very well, who's a former – he might have been a first-round pick of the Hurricanes.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, he's a former first-round pick. So he's a guy that finally was able to establish himself a bit. I just think Nashville, kind of what you said, because of experience, they might get the nod, but I do think there's a good chance it goes to 4 or 5. I just put it at 25% chance because I think what if it goes to 5, the team with the experience, especially since there's no home advantage here,
exactly,
has a better chance of nodding it out in that time because you're going to have all those experienced guys, other than Phil Kessel and Goligoski and those guys, more on the Predators than you do on the Coyotes. But saying that the Coyotes have better goaltending, I don't think is necessarily nuts because Kemper could have won the Vezina. If he didn't get injured, Darcy probably would have been up there for the Vezina. So, and Antti Ranta is also a hell of a goaltender, so their combo is probably right there with Pekka and Jussi Saros. So I would say they're almost even when it comes to that as well. It's just Pekka could be a Hall of Fame goaltender potentially. That's at the end of his career where Darcy Kemper took a little bit to get going, struggled a bit with the Wild, had a okay few games in the playoffs that he lost most of them, but put up decent stats, and then now finally has found himself as a starter. But I agree with what you said. I just think the experience is going to win out, and that's why I put it at 25.
Yeah.
Only for the Coyotes. But that's definitely a very tight series. Our other very tight series is, again, another former Flyer, another Flyer. Great, honestly. He was a very good player when he was on the team. And Rod Brindamore, who coaches the Carolina Hurricane. And then we have against the New York Rangers, who have looked a lot better since Dave Tippett took over. So, what do you think the Rangers' chances of beating the Hurricanes?
This one's so tough. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really think the regular season stats matter because when do they really matter in the playoffs? I mean, we obviously saw it last year. I mean, with Tampa Bay getting swept, all four wildcard teams are making it past the first round. Regular season stats do not necessarily matter in the playoffs. They do and they don't at the same time. I'm not going to say they don't matter at all. They matter to some degree. But personally, I still think the Rangers are going to win the series, but I think it's going to be in 5. I do not see Carolina like. First of all, that whole thing of them being that they don't want to play the Rangers just makes me already think that they're probably going to lose. It just makes me think that they may not be ready, and they also might be worrying too much about their opponent instead of just going in there and trying to play their game. Which again, it's tough to do. I mean, all these teams are going through the same thing. I have many of these series going 5 games because I think the first couple are going to be so boring. It's not even funny. Where it's like all the teams are going to kind of like be, oh my God, we haven't played in 4 or 5 months. And it's like, oh, you're just thrown to the wolves of playing games where everybody gets like 1 or 2 exhibition games. I feel like they're going to be really low scoring games. I don't think there's going to be any game that's probably over 5 goals for a while. I feel like it's going to be like a really, really tight series. And that's how I have a lot of these. And now some of them are obviously a little bit different depending on the team and things along those lines. But I think this is going to be 3-2 in favor of the Rangers. I think that with them using Lundqvist, which I believe that they will use Lundqvist in the playoffs, I can't see them using.
Backup option either, though.
Yeah, exactly.
If Lundqvist fails, you have one of the best young goalies.
Yeah, exactly. You have Igor Shesterkin, and then you also have Georgiev. Yeah, sorry. You have him as well. But the thing is I personally think that the Rangers will win this series. I think in 5 games. I think Zibanejad and Panarin are going to help them. I think they have a pretty solid defensive core to win them games. I think it's going to be good for them as well.
Yeah, I'm not that far. You put them at 60-40. I put the reverse of you. I gave the Rangers a 40% chance of the upset, which is still close to a chance of upsetting. So I wouldn't be surprised. It's just I don't want to doubt the Hurricanes because the Hurricanes, ever since Rod Brindamore came in, they're just one of those teams that finds a way. It's like they go by the old saying, if there's a will, there's a way. That's just been the Hurricanes ever since Rod Brindamore took over, letting them all be themselves, do the post-game crazy, goofy celebrations of dunking on somebody or whatever they feel like doing, bowling and knocking each other over, like whatever post-game celebrations they do that are ridiculous. He let those guys be themselves, and it seemed like that obviously worked immensely because they didn't go deep, but they did well last year, and they did well again this year. So I gave the Rangers a 40 because I think they match up really well and have a chance to beat the Canes. It's just I don't doubt the Canes because the Canes have a coach that Brindamore come in and they don't have the best overall roster. They have a good roster. Don't get me wrong.
They don't have like that star player.
Great defense, but other than they have like Svechnikov who's developing into that, they don't have that. Oh my God.
It's just like the Islanders.
Other than him, that's developing.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with the Islanders as well. They don't have that star guy. Obviously, you have Barzal, Nelson, Lee as well, guys that are developing into very good players and star players for that matter. It's funny. That's honestly one of the only teams. This is a little off topic, but that's one of the only teams that the Flyers struggled against this year was the Islanders. I lost all 3 games against them.
Yeah, we didn't. I forget. I can't remember. Do you remember who was in net for more of those games? Who was right?
It was Elliott at home in the shootout loss. Carter Hart on the road, and I believe the one was Elliott when they lost 5-3 when they came back late to tie it and they gave up the goal from Pollock.
So those are 2 starts with Elliott. So for like you said for the playoffs, that might be a little bit off sample size since Elliott probably wouldn't, if all goes right, probably wouldn't be starting in the playoffs if we played.
Yeah, I mean, obviously and it's the same thing. Like I talked about this in my video too, about Boston. Like we only saw Tuukka Rask once. The other two games they won,
I saw
Halak
that.
was in it. Yeah, and Rask didn't give up a goal. He was phenomenal in that game. Stole the game from them. And that's the same thing from Vasilevsky. We saw him twice. He stole one of the games from him. Holtby, they absolutely had they had Holtby's number all season. They could really they lit him up for all of the year. But I'm sorry, I don't want to go too off topic.
No, you're good. No, that doesn't matter. I mean, we sometimes go off topic. We're just talking about hockey anyway, so it doesn't matter as long as you stay home. Of course, talking about all the fun stuff. But no, I agree with that. I think they probably will go with Hank, but they definitely have an interesting decision because when you have a kid come in and go 10-2 and basically take the league by storm, just like Carter did last year, you definitely have a tough decision to make when it comes to, let's see, future Hall of Famer, kid that we love, that Hank loves also, that he thinks to be a great goaltender. It's like,
he's only played like 12 games in the NHL. So do you really put him up against all that talent? I don't know if they do that. Honestly, I think if that's what they do, I think they lose the series. I'm serious about that. I think if they have to make the right decision. If they make the wrong one too early, then I think obviously they can change and throw Lundqvist in net, but it's just, I think if they fall behind too early with making some bad decisions, they'll be out.
That's true. It all depends though, because kind of like Hart has that bull mentality for a young kid. And Shesterkin has, I think it's 2 years on him coming over from the KHL because I think Hart's still 21 and Shesterkin's 23. So he played great over there. I think he might be one of those guys playing with some boys among, like some men among boys over there, kind of is ahead a little bit. So if they did, I would probably first say go with the guy that's won Vezinas and's been one of the best goalies of our generation. But I would say he would have a chance to be successful because he just seems like one of those guys to me that's not phased. Samsonov kind of seems like that as well, but I think Samsonov is actually a notch below Shesterkin, where he might eventually be even with him just because Shesterkin came in and lit it. Samsonov came in and played really well, but he didn't match exactly what Hart did. How much Hart did with Shesterkin.
Yeah, and obviously I think another thing was that Samsonov played more games. So obviously his numbers are going to take a hit there from playing compared to Shesterkin. Yeah. I get what you mean. I know exactly what you mean, but I think that's one of the biggest things is that he played more games. So that definitely did not help his case.
No,
numbers wise.
Either way, we're talking about all these goalies in our division, and like Jamie and I said in our video, man, this division going to have some fun goaltender battles for a lot of years, especially if Blackwood for the Devils continues to develop into a solid netminder for them. You're going to have all these young goaltender battles in this division.
And then you still have Matt Murray, Tristan Jarry. It's
got Sorokin coming over from Russia as well for the Islanders, who eventually is going to be their starter, which is the main reason they paid Semyon Varlamov, so he could come over here. So that's the main reason they're like, here's $5 million, Semyon. But that actually didn't work out bad. He actually had a pretty good season for him. It's not like he played bad. And $5 million for a goalie of his caliber is kind of where the market is nowadays, anyway. So if anything, it was like probably a $0.2 million overpay. Like you would have 4.8 or 4.7. So 0.2, 0.3. But anyway, we'll go into, this is another interesting goalie matchup because you have a guy that struggled I almost said Alex Stalock. Alex Stalock played very well. Sorry, Wild fans. In Devin Dubnyk, and you have a guy in Jacob Markstrom, who's another great goalie in this league, who also is in his contract year. So he's going to be playing for money. So what do you think the Wild, because this is another pretty interesting and close-knit series, the Wild are going to be able to do, especially because they also just committed to their head coach. So I think morale-wise, that really helps in the room that your interim head coach isn't your interim head coach anymore. And that's going to be the guy with you and riding with you through next year and not just this short period.
Yeah, exactly. Personally, I really don't know about the Wild. I honestly think that the Canucks have more offensive talent. I think the Wild are just a little bit better on the defensive side of the puck. Not saying that Vancouver has bad defense. Obviously, Quinn Hughes, Tyler Myers, Edler as well. They're all pretty solid defensemen, and there's more. Chris Tanev, and that's just the top of my head. But I personally believe that I think that Vancouver probably has like a 60% chance winning this. I'd say 40 for the Wild. This is probably 4 or 5 for me. If it's 4, it'll take a while for Minnesota to show up. I know they played pretty solid versus Vancouver in the regular season. They also do have Alex Galchenyuk, which I forgot. Um, I personally
A lot of
think.
people forget about that pickup. You're not. I always forget about that. I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah, definitely. Personally, I think it'll be Vancouver just because of the way that how structured they are and how good they are defensively, and especially how they can score. I mean, they're like a goal scoring team. They also have a very good power play. So, I think the Wild are better defensively. But I'm not counting out Vancouver's defense. I think they're pretty good, but I think that they will definitely beat the Wild in this series.
Gotcha. Yeah, that so you did 60-40. I did exactly. Jamie and I went lockstep in this, and we literally put this series as a draw. We both said it's at a 50, so I wouldn't bet on. Basically, I would not bet on the series. If I was a betting man, this would not be one that I would look at to put any money into whatsoever. It's
Yeah.
fairly even. Where one that I would look to potentially, because even though I think the Canes are still going to win, I would put $5 or $10 on it because I know the Rangers have a chance. I would stay doing that, but this is a series I would never put money on. I just think it's so close, and if Doobie plays like the real Devin Dubnyk, and we know he can play like, that's a game changer as well, especially because Alex Stalock played like a beast this year when he had to come in too. And what people don't know about him is Dubnyk kind of likes playing the puck too, but Stalock's one of the best puck moving
Goalies in the league, yeah.
So that really helps if they do decide to go with him because he's a hot hand and he plays well in the playoff. That helps to take a lot of pressure off of your defense as well, especially playing a team with the offensive prowess of Vancouver to help out there a little bit as well. So their goaltending decision is definitely, that might be the most interesting goaltending decision going into the playoffs with Dubnyk struggling and just how well Stalock stepped up. So that I think kind of sways where I might lean with that too. But the other 10-7 is also a very close matchup. We mentioned them earlier with the fact that they don't have the one guy other than Barzal's developing into it, but they don't have the Elias Pettersson even of their team that came in and went, oh my God. So the Islanders against the Panthers, who are also a similar team in that factor. They have a lot of guys on their team that are good, which could be the reason why they don't have one guy that you go, oh my God, their system kind of traps guys from becoming their best self. But other than that, how good of a chance do you think the Panthers have as a 10 seed to beat the 7 seeded
I honestly think this is 50-50. I think both teams are good. I think they both have good goalies. They're both all solid on offense. And I think the defense is pretty even. It's not great, but it's even to where I think this could go 50-50. I honestly don't know who would win. I can't really pick who would win off of this right now. I honestly would have to wait and see the first couple of games and be like, okay, here's my winner. I do not have a clear-cut answer of who I think is going to win right, yet. Um, I'd have to say it's even for me. I'd have to go 50-50.
Gotcha. Yeah, I went with, I think, the Isles, or I think Jamie went with 30%. Steele, I know because we talked about this on our one friend, Purelo Wisdom's podcast, who does a hockey podcast from up in Canada, and we were talking about how Bob. Yeah, I understand Chris Dreiser played well, but I don't think Chris Dreiser is going to come in and be like, yeah, you know what, guys, I'm the saving grace in the postseason. If he does, good for him. But Bob's going to have to play like Bob and not one iota like he played this year in order for the Panthers to beat the Islanders, because the Islanders do have an offense that can kind of get on you a little bit, especially if your goalies, like, you lose momentum early because, like, Bob was susceptible to doing this year, lets in a pretty soft goal, and then it's kind of, they have Matheson, who struggled this year, had a down year as a defenseman, who just got paid too, so that doesn't look great. So that to me is a big if. That's why I actually only gave the Panthers a 5% chance of beating the Islanders, because
Really?
I don't like the way they play. Like I said, I don't dislike Joe Quenneville. I just don't like. I think it might do best maybe him in his second year, because it seems like that team's just been out of sorts all year. Like I said, it seems like guys for some reason won't play up to their talent. Like they're kind of like trying to make everybody good, so then they don't make themselves as good as they could be. Like their offense doesn't score as much as it could. You got Huberdeau on that team. You got Barkov. I mean, you have guys that you should be able to generate more. And the reason you were in the higher spot, and they also were one of the teams, again, regular season doesn't matter, but they were shaky when we were closing out. They didn't look the best towards the end, so they're going to have to come back and look much better than they played towards the end. But I do like Eric Hall if he's able to step up in the playoffs, being a playmaking to make their lines deeper at center. But they just need their goal scoring. And even Quenneville said this, he was on NHL Network. They need their guys like Barkey and others, Hoffman and others, who had a solid year, but like their goal scorers would be the main guys putting the puck in the net, because Brett Conley and Nola Jari are not the guys that you thought were going to be some of your leading goal scorers coming into the year when you looked at the Panthers roster. You didn't pinpoint Nola Jari and Brett Conley and go, oh, if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on them being in the top 4 in goal scoring in Florida. So that's kind of what he was getting at, and that's what puts them so low for me. I feel like they just don't play to their strengths enough for some reason.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I completely agree with that.
That's the only reason I put them so low. It's not team on paper. It's literally just the way the team plays on the ice. But this is another interesting matchup, because we're talking about the way teams play on the ice. They looked a lot better after they got rid of all the cultural crap, let's just put it like that their former head coach, that we just will decide not to even name, left there with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then you have the Blue Jackets. This is the host city Maple Leafs, of course, against the Toronto Blue Jackets, the Columbus Blue Jackets. So how much of a chance do you think Tortorella's team has at beating Sheldon Keefe's team? Because I think the reason people, if they give the Blue Jackets a nod, is mainly the coaching.
I have to go Columbus. I have to. I think this team is obviously Toronto, amazing on offense. Columbus, very good on defense. And the other two, Columbus's offense isn't that great. Toronto's defense isn't that great. Goaltending, I have to probably give to Toronto. I think Freddie Anderson's a very underrated goalie in this league. I'd have to go 60-40 Columbus. Actually, no, 55-45. I think that 5%. Yeah. I think it's a little tight. Special teams, I think Columbus has a pretty solid penalty kill. Also have a pretty solid power play. Toronto, very, very good power play. I'm not so sure about their PK. It's probably not bad. I'm not necessarily 100% sure. It's struggled. I know that. I know they've obviously struggled this season. I personally have to go with Columbus, though.
Yeah, Toronto's an interesting case because, like I said, they struggled early. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the culture got all out of whack with all the stuff with their former head coach in Babcock, where Keefe is able to have his own camp. So that's an interesting factor to me because they have a talented roster. The problem is they didn't play up to their talented roster, similar to how Florida didn't play up to their talented roster. But the difference there is their goaltender played well this year still, numbers-wise. He didn't play as good as his normal career numbers. That's because their team struggled more. But he didn't have a Bob year where he was just completely off. So with that, I gave them, again, I put the Jackets at 30 because Torts, I think they have a 30% chance. I just think the Leafs, I think the more I read stuff, at first I didn't think this was a big advantage, but I think just being in your area that you're used to, even though you're in a hub and you're in a bubble, you're still in the area you're used to, you're playing in your own stadium that you're used to. It feels a little bit, it feels a little bit more natural to you. And if you want to get really annoying, you can start playing with the caveats and bounces and all that stuff and clear it into the zone and dump and chase and have Columbus get all out of sorts and pissed off because they have no idea how stuff bounces off of the boards in Toronto. That's the thing that's going to be interesting. If the Oilers adjust their games and the Leafs adjust their games a bit because of the fact that there's no fans, they're playing in their own stadiums, and the only advantage is knowing how your own stadium works now. So you might say, oh, we don't normally dump and chase as much. But because this team has no idea how stuff bounces in our stadium, maybe we should
do it now.
Dump and chase and try to have it to bounce in front of the net. And all of a sudden, Kyler Yamamoto's right there, and he's like, oh, look, a wide open net. And then he just puts it right in for a goal. So those are going to be interesting things to look at. But I that would be another series. I just think the Leafs, they've looked better for me since Sheldon Keefe took over, which is a great testament to him being able to figure that out in those trying conditions. So I have to give him credit for that. That's why I love Torts, and I don't like doubting Torts, but that's also why I put it as high as 30, because that's a series I might think that the Leafs have a better chance of winning. But if they had odds that you could win money on, if you put 10, 15 bucks on, I would debate doing that for that one, because you're only losing 10, 15 bucks if you don't get it. And if the odds are pretty good, you would get a lot more money. So, but this is the really interesting series as an 8 and 9, because you have, Travis Hamonic, for those that don't know, did say he's not going to play in the playoffs due to the coronavirus. But the Flames do still have a much deeper defense, even with that being said, than the Winnipeg Jets. So how much of a chance do you think, I don't even know if I should say the Jets or Connor Hellebuyck, has of beating the Flames? Because when it came to the Jets winning a lot of their games this year, at least 89% of the time it was because of their goaltending.
I have to say probably like an 85% chance. I honestly think that Winnipeg will win this series. I don't know how much, but I definitely, I definitely think that they'll win. I don't know, percentage wise, it'll definitely be tough, to figure that out. I have to go Winnipeg because of Connor Hellebuyck. He's unreal. He should win the Vezina. Unbelievable goaltender. And now that Calgary just lost Travis Hamonic, arguably one of their better defensemen this season. And now you're kind of fighting, thinking like, you get that thought in the back of your mind. That's like, okay, now what do we do now? We just lost Hamonic, and it's like, that definitely hurts them. I'm not counting out Calgary. Very, very good team. Kind of a one-line team, but I do think they are a good team. I have to go Winnipeg on this one, probably in 4.
Gotcha. So that would probably be like a 52 to 55%, I would say, of an upset, since you said you still like Calgary having a chance.
Yeah, probably something along those lines. Honestly, I'd have to go probably 60-40, if anything. Like, part of me thinks it can be like a complete blowout, and then part of me also thinks it could be really close.
Okay, well, that's the one on our last one, because I was at 35. From your explanation, you got me to go up a little bit. I'll give them a 40% chance of upsetting Calgary. And the only reason I did that is I think an underrated goalie that struggled at the beginning of this year then was able to reestablish himself after Talbot was able to kind of mend the fences there and hold down the fort for a period of time. Riddick, I think, is a guy that he's never going to be a top goalie in the league. He's going to be a guy with the right system. That's a good goalie that can win you games, that can get you to where you want to go. So I think depending how he plays is going to really hinder. And also, it's going to depend really how much the Jets' offense plays, because the Jets' defense is not good. If the Jets' offense struggles, you have Neil Pionk and Morrissey as your most consistent defenseman. Beyond that, you don't have any other guys that are usually very consistent. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I honestly wouldn't say it's not good. I think it's playing good for losing three of the best right-handed defensemen in the league in one season, and Myers,
That's a good
Strubek,
point.
and Bufflin. I think it's pretty good for losing three of those guys to teams. Obviously, one being in your conference in Vancouver there, and then you lose Trouba to the Rangers, and obviously Bufflin. No one knows where he'll play yet, but I think it's honestly played pretty good for, as I said, losing those guys, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why Hellebuck has stepped up. Their defense isn't as great, and he's really thought to himself, he's got to be not have to be better, but he has to step up here. I think he's one of the leaders on that team. But and again, it's not a shot at you. I'm just saying overall, I just think that their defense has proven a little bit more to me than I would have expected. I personally didn't have them in the playoffs at the beginning of the season, and obviously with everything going on, they're now in. But I believe, were they in a playoff spot before, or were they like a handful of points out?
I think I'm trying to remember. I think the Jets might have actually been one of these two teams were flipped before they switched to point percentages in terms of 8 and 9 seed. I'm trying to remember which one because they switched to point percentages because of the difference of game. Yeah. But one of the teams was flipped before they switched it to points percentages, and I think it was the Jets in Flames. So I think if they ended it and kept it without points percentages, I think that might have been the series that the Jets would have been in. And then the Flames wouldn't have been in if they kept the playoff the same and just did it how the standings ended and didn't change it from adjusting the games you played and all that. I'm pretty
definitely.
sure that was the series,
yeah.
But, no, I agree with you for that. I actually, I forget what, like you said, doing all the stuff, I forget what the hell we talked about it on. But on one of my friends' podcasts, we talked about the Jets losing everybody, basically, and the kitchen sink, other than Pionk and Josh Morrissey. And then they still played pretty well. But the issue with me is you have to see how that translates in the playoffs because normally if you're now Connor Hellebuck has the capabilities of playing like Jonathan Quick played in the Kings run to the Stanley Cup where he has like a 1-9, whatever the hell it was, goals against, and he's basically the second coming of Jesus. So like he has the capabilities of doing that. I think he might have to do that just because of how the Flames offense is top heavy, the Jets defense is top heavy. Dylan DeMello helps. Having Dylan DeMello there really does help to solidify a second pairing. But Kulikov is kind of just a journeyman at this point of his career. Niku's a solid defenseman, but again, has no experience. So, like, you have guys there. Logan Staley, I don't know if he's playing, but I know he was injured, but he's, again, has no experience. So, I think it's close because I gave him a 40% chance. So that's a pretty high percent chance. And the reason I gave that high percent chance is because I think Connor Hellebuck's a game changer. My big thing, I know Jamie tends to talk to all of us on the team a lot, is I love talking about goalies. So whenever there's a good goalie, even if I don't think your team has a good chance of upsetting, I'll probably up the nod at least 5 or some percent to be like, yeah, you have a chance to just say, yeah, I'm Jonathan Quick, everybody. I'm taking it. Nobody's winning this series other than me. So that's kind of the capabilities Hellebuck has. That's why I put it up to 40. But the Flames as a whole team just has a deeper defense, and the fact that if they're able to get their guys going that struggled this year on the scoring end, that's going to create some trouble for the Jets because they don't have the deep defense, like I just said.
Yeah.
So if you have to match up in a 3-3 game, and who's going to defend better in the end, I don't think that's going to go to the Jets.
Nah. Yeah, I can see it. I definitely do agree with that.
But anyway, I don't know if you had any closing wrap-up thoughts on the round robin or the play-ins, because we went through all the games in a pretty good time. It only took us about 45 minutes. It's actually a pretty good clip to go through the whole play-in round, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the Flyers are going to do some damage. Obviously, it depends on how they play. Excuse me. Especially how this team has been in recent years, where you kind of have a team where it's kind of like they kind of don't play great after long breaks, and we saw that this season when they went out from the home game versus the Rangers December 23rd, and then they don't play again until the 28th, and then they go, out into Western California, and then like Vegas, Arizona as well, and I believe they went like 0-4-2 on that whole road trip. It was like 6 games. They did not. I don't think they actually won a single game. They didn't play that great, and then they come home, and they play really good. Now in recent years, they'd be really bad for a while, and then they'd be like, oh, well, we're only 10, 15 points out. We can make it. And then they're pushing for the last month or so of the season. Now it's kind of like they got they got everything back into gear, and they played really good. So I'm hoping that now with all the phase 2 stuff, the phase 3 training camps and things like that, they said that scrimmages were supposed to come out of this. So that's definitely good to see. Hopefully guys can maybe start to get up to that in-game feel. Obviously it won't be like that because it is a scrimmage, but it definitely is good to see, and I'm very excited for these playoffs. And Joe, I know you are too.
No, yeah, I'm ecstatic for the playoffs. I know scrimmages have to happen, I think, in practice. So nothing like a game, but just to get people more in a feel. It's what's been going on ever since baseball's let the people back at the stadiums. You saw inter-squad games because at least it does is makes you feel like you're somewhat in the realm of a game and skating like you're in a game where you've just been skating around ice, shooting and doing drills for months. You haven't had any of it, even a similar close feeling to a game. So that's why the fact that they were able to find a successful, safe way to do that is very beneficial. And then obviously the exhibition game are going to help as well, because I do think as long as you get has it been confirmed yet that we're definitely, because everything I've been watching is 1-2, 1-2. Has it been confirmed there's going to be 2, or is there a chance there's still going to be 1?
I do not have an answer for you. I think it's either, one team plays 1 or some play 2.
Yeah.
I'd have to think that if they pick a number, every team's got to play it. I can't see some teams playing 2 and some teams playing 1. That just seems unfair to me.
Seems unfair. Yeah, exactly.
Unless it's like a team that is going into the playoffs or something like that, or if they have to switch it. When I say playoffs, I mean not the round robin, so not the top 4 teams. All the teams in the play-in, maybe they give them 2 games and the teams in the round robin get 1. Doesn't really seem fair to me still, but I could honestly see that happening. This is the NHL. But it seems like it's kind of just like, I personally, I don't really know what's going to happen with that. I wouldn't be surprised who they'd play. I honestly have no idea who they would play. I'd have to think it's someone out of the round robin teams, right? I mean, I'd have to think it's something like that, or maybe they do like a rivalry something. I have no idea. But all that means is that we get another hockey game to watch, so it's fine by me.
Oh yeah, it'll be nice watching because the reason I ask that is if there's 2, I think Elliott will play in 1. If there's 1, I don't think Elliott's going to play because I think Hart would probably get the 1 exhibition.
I'd honestly have to think that if they do the 1, I'd have to think that it would probably be Hart. If there's 2, I'd have to think Elliott in the second one, Hart in the first one. I have to think you go at your starter in these. And it's not a 1A, 1B situation now. It is Carter Hart is the starter for this team. He's had the net all year. It's just statistically he was not great on the road, and that's why Elliott got the road games and was very good in a lot of the road games. But Carter Hart's. I talked about this with Derek Settlemeyer the other night. Carter Hart is a guy, and he said it too. He's a guy that doesn't get rattled. Like,
exactly.
You've seen him. Obviously, he gives up a goal, and next save. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think if Hart can not get rattled, I think it'll be fine for the Flyers team. I think they're going to do good, and I'm honestly hoping. And I know it sounds so biased, but I honestly think that they can go 3-0.
No, I think our roster does help because another guy that I know I might do a mini video on our roster soon, but I like who we picked to add from the Phantoms because if you have injuries to someone that's more defensively touted, you added German to the Rupsov to the roster, who at this point of his career is best in his own end and is betting better on the off. He's good at the offensive end, but this year with the Phantoms, they really honed him in at being great on his own end, so he can really step in. Hopefully, God forbid, no one likes this goes down, but if a Lawton was out for a game or two day to day, you would probably look at someone like him over a more offensively mindseted person because his game style would match to where you want to put him in to substitute for that guy. That's why I really love the roster we picked, because you hope there's no injuries and no sickness, but probability wise, especially this season with the ladder, there's just not a high chance that that's going to happen. So you're probably going to need some of these guys to step up for you. And I like the chances with the guys we have of them being able to step up for us if they have to. Even like Jamie said, I'm not. This better not come to this. But if it had to for one game for a day-to-day thing, he stepped up against Colorado. If he had to step up for one game, Alex Lyon might be able to step up for one game in the playoffs. Beyond one or two games, I don't know where you're going to get there, but he stepped up against one of the best teams in the West. AV trusted him against one of the best teams in the West. Then said after the game, Couturier and Lyon are the reasons we won that game. So that, to me, speaks volumes on the confidence he has in him, which I think goes a long way in helping more like depth / third string developing backup goalies when they finally get that coach that says, I believe you could be something in this league, where I don't think until now, other than in the minors, but in the NHL level, Alex Lyon had a coach that said, I believe you have a chance to step up against a team of this caliber. So I think the way AV coaches this team, the reason I use that analogy is he doesn't just do that with Lyon. He did that with, you saw when he put in Knack, look how much confidence our coaching staff instilled in him right away, and look how well he played. He was a guy that they probably thought, oh, we'll have this kid up for a couple of weeks. You might have to send him back down, fine-tuning. He never ended up back out of the lineup after he went in the lineup because of how well he played. Bunneman's a guy that I think they honestly just sent down because they wanted him to fine-tune his skills because of how confident they wanted him. It sounds like they think he could even be a third liner. But he probably didn't have to be sent down. He was playing well enough. It's just you got more experience than Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I feel like the reason they picked Bunneman for this is kind of just like a fourth line role kind of thing. Him and Torensky both play that, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why didn't they pick David Kasha? I thought to myself, you know what? His role does not make sense for this playoffs. It means Kasha, to me, is like a third line winger. We saw that a little bit with him this season. I personally believe that Bunneman and Torensky are two fourth line guys, and that is why they were picked for this team, because they are depth players. And that's the Flyers are basically are a victim of their own system right now. And that basically means that they are having the best problem that they could have, and that is having too much depth. That is the best problem they could have. It is, one of the best things. And it was fun talking about this. I definitely enjoyed it, talking about the playoffs and, thinking about all this stuff, because there's so many things that can go into it.
Yeah, there definitely is. I just love the depth. Obviously, bringing in Derek Grant, the dude had 4 points in 7 games, I think it was.
Yeah, and it only took him like a game or two to really start getting going.
So, he's a guy that really helps. But it's going to be interesting. It's great. It's almost one of those things that in the end, it works out for your young guys. You obviously never wanted to see the world come to this and have all these issues, but at least for a silver lining, you get to have Zamula with the team in a training camp coming into the postseason. You get to have Bunneman and Trewinski, who probably wouldn't have been up. You get to have those guys that you think have a chance to take place for some of the guys you might lose in free agency as your fourth liners next year. Just get the camp experience. And that goes a very long way in getting your feet wet, especially when it comes to Zamula, who you think is going to be a beast. So that goes a huge way in getting your feet wet. And he's also a guy I'm not so sure they would debate, depending how he looks. We'll save this for a future topic episode, but saying, screw it, maybe we'll put him in a game if he looks that good. I think he might get an exhibition if there's an exhibition.
Yeah, I would love to see him paired with Justin Braun. I think that'd be a great pairing, Zamula and Braun. I think Zamula was very good in the World Juniors, and I thought he was phenomenal. He went in as the number 2 D-man, the second unit quarterback on the power play for Russia, and then they realized after the I believe 3.2 goal game he had, they were like, Zamula's playing really good here, and he got more power play time, more ice time, so poised with the puck in that tournament. Unbelievable. He was arguably Russia's best player. I think he was Russia's best player. Sadly, they
especially for a
Came
team.
up. Yeah, yeah,
Being that team's best player is a very high compliment when you're an undrafted
yeah,
kid that team picked up.
yeah, exactly.
Um, but anyway, thanks a lot, Chris, for joining this episode of The Grittiest Take. Everyone have a great and safe night. Let's go Flyers. We're back, baby. The Flyers are back. We're ready to make a deep run into the playoffs. I'm confident like Chris is and Jamie. I think most of everybody, because Chris also works with the Flyers nitty-gritty team, I think most people over for us are pretty damn confident in this team. And that is not an FEC violation word, by the way, for people, so I'm allowed to say that. And this has been The Grittiest Take. Have a great and safe night, everybody. Peace out.